Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This again is the humble voice of Ahmed Olusegun Oduntan saying of the various secessionist groups in Nigeria that the Yoruba Nation is my new pride and bride. And of the Ibadan 20s, I crave your indulgence to say that the strategic flaw was not that they acted, but that they failed. Because an act which results in failure is treasonable, but that which succeeds is reasonable. I have examined with the utmost objective care, and I have arrived at a conclusion that it is in the patriotic interest of the peoples of Nigeria to disband, or at least be reconstituted into units or regions in line with the aspirations of the different nations of Nigeria. To continue to ignore justifiable agitations for both secession and or reconstitution is a blind affirmation of the criminal amalgamation of 1914, a colonial act bereft of surgical finesse and consideration for the ethno-cultural differences of nations so carpentered. The crux of that geopolitical carpentry was administrative cost and colonial expediency. It is now a cross which we must dismantle. For up to 5 weeks, I went on an honeymoon with my new bride, my newly found love, the Yoruba Nation. I was last seen in action on April 1st, conducting a surgical analysis on an interview granted by Professor Wande Abimbola. Soon after that, 20 Yoruba Nation agitators launched what seemed like a suicidal assault on the Oyo State House of Assembly. That April 12th unsuccessful assault was swiftly checked in a brotherly manner by the on-site Amotekun force in what could have easily led to a bloodbath and a national Ula Balu were hit to be countered by a sickle-celled federal blooded force. And that was actually another credit in the bank for the evangelists of state police. That action was twinned by the proclamation of independence and sovereignty by Mrs. Dupe Onitiri, who in a broadcast on April 13th proclaimed secession from the geographical and political fraud called Nigeria. And the seemingly comedic failure of Boots, deployed to take the State House, drew national and international scorn. The Yoruba agitants were laughed at and branded as clowns on some cheap drugs, even by their own Yoruba compatriots. So the Sunday Igboho and the Professor Banji Akitoye faction quickly professed their innocence, disowned them with jet speed alacrity, distancing themselves by thousands of miles from the supposedly treasonable or reasonable actions of the Dupe Onitiri faction. They threw that faction under the bus without a blink of the eye. But behold, is it not the nature of men to disown failure? Yoruba adage says, "Ọmọ tó pawó wálé ni bàbá ẹ̀ mọ̀." But èyí tó ń jẹ́ ìdààmú àdúgbò, Yorùbá sọ wípé ọmọ màmá ẹ̀ ni. And that leads us to the question, Dúpẹ́ Onítìrí, treasonable or reasonable, a heroine or on heroine? Onto that treasonable or reasonable assault on the State House, the agitation for Yoruba Nation had no roots in my heart. I had only felt or heard of the drumsticks on my eardrums. IPOB was a much more active force, and their teeth stronger and sharper, definitely owing to a history and experience that dates back to the late 60s. So technically speaking, the agitation for Yoruba Nation is still in its pediatric and neonatal stage. Yes, but the infancy of the agitation is not an excuse for strategic foolishness. In our fight for freedom, we should not be content to learn as we go. There is no room for such fatal hit and miss. The universe is replete with and abundant with heritages and experiences to draw from. We must learn from history so that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. Even if we choose to repeat the history of the past or its unavoidable mistakes, it must ultimately be to our strategic ends and not to the fatal end of our cause and ourselves. So look, I doff my hat for the boots, the men and women who had the balls of steel and the guts of gold and the breastplate of courage to assault the seats of the Oyo State governments. The strategic flaw is not that they acted, but that they failed. And I want to tell you that the utmost strategic success is that my heart and soul, and definitely of many Nigerians, is won to this cause. And if your tail is still on the fence, beware that that fence is sitting on sand dunes. So, as I said, an act which results in failure is treasonable, but that which succeeds is reasonable. The heroic actions of April 13th of the Ibadan 20 is the revolutionary and emancipatory Siamese of the American John Brown's attack on Harper's Ferry, Virginia, where John Brown, a die-hard abolitionist, and his militia on October 17, 1859, captured and raided a federal armory and arsenal. Although denounced by fellow abolitionists for his violent methods, 2 years later, his name would become the rallying symbol for Union soldiers, civilians, and slaves, who all sang the popular hymn titled John Brown's Body. And also, I want to say Nigeria is a geopolitical and geoeconomic fraud. Hey, the heroism of the Ibadan 20s for the first time won my attention to the agitation for Yoruba Nation. Before that time, I dismissed secessionist agitations on the grounds that they do not spell an end to the capitalistic injustices and the economic blows that the common man suffers in his daily struggles to survive. Ìyẹn ni mo fi máa ń sọ pé òmìnira kò sọ pé kí òpin dé bá ìnira. Ìpínyà kò sọ pé kí òpin dé bá ìyà. But upon closer inspection and introspection, we must not fail to see that the foundations of our country is fraught with fraud. And that fraud was hatched at the Berlin Conference of 1885, where Africa was divided among Euro-imperial schemas. Initially, the Royal Niger Company, a mercantile firm, administered the Southern Protectorate, which was the Lower Niger. And that company folded in 1900. The eventual result is Nigeria, a geographical and geopolitical concoction contrived for the colonial expediency and imperial conveniency of Britain. If you have won, your sixth sense must reveal to you that the amalgamation of the northern and southern protectorates in 1914 by Lord Lugard was purposefully to cut administrative costs and also for the efficiency of colonial heist and blind imperial thievery. So the criminal intent and the interest of the colonial overlords blotted out the minutest consideration for the heterogeneous nature of the nations of the Niger area. So this amalgamation eventually overheated after 3 decades and 2 years, leading to regionalism under the Richard Constitution of 1946. Regionalism flourished, and we see Nigeria by way of the Western region under the premiership of Chief Obafemi Awolowo set ground-breaking records before unseen on the African continent. Unfortunately, military interventions spelled the demise of the regional political structures. So General Gowon, aka Go On with One Nigeria, would promulgate the Unification Decree 14 of May 27, 1967, which broke the regions into 12 states as a tactical low blow in anticipation of the Civil War, which broke out less than 2 months later, exactly July 6, 1967. So 11 decades of amalgamation and 6 decades of Decree number 14, a colonial come military proclamation, and not the law of the peoples in their assemblies, nor a referendum, restructured the political landscape into what is now the raison d'etre of many secessionist agitations. So the Nigerian states, the deep states, and their imperial and neo-colonial overlords must wake up to the reality that every right-thinking Nigerian has reasonable grounds to begin to deploy trebuchets and kinjals to undo the great crimes of the Berlin Conference of 1885, the amalgamation of 1914, and the Disunification Decree of 1967. Thus, it is in the best interest of Nigeria to disband. Thank you.